We are going to start the webinar. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, where we take a look at a subject that always seems to get a lot of attention. Today's topic: retire on your own terms, not just at 65. I've seen a lot of interest and discussion from among compared to many of our other webinars. And my guess is that it's because of two reasons. One, the topic is quite intriguing for sure. And two, because of our two panelists. And let me start by introducing them to you. We have with us Mr. Ashok Sardana, founder and managing director of the Continental Group. Ashok has been advising clients on a range of financial planning solutions for over 40 years now. He is a lifetime member of the MDRT and has been a top of the table qualifier for over 20 years. A much sought after speaker, he was most recently featured in the International Advisors IA 100, which acknowledges the top 100 influencers in the global financial services profession. He works and has worked extensively with high net worth and ultra high net worth families across the globe on all areas of life insurance and legacy planning. He continuously seeks to find more thoughtful and effective ways to help clients live the best life that they can imagine. Welcome, boss, as we like to call Mr. Ashok, to the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Aslam.
We also have with us, sorry, please go ahead.
No, I said this was my latest introduction.
Thank you for joining us. We also have with us Mr. Rickson D'Souza. Rickson is a life insurance specialist to high net worth entrepreneurs and executives with over 21 years of experience in the profession. For a decade now, Rickson has held a seat at the MDRT, top of the table, and on reserve for the top 1% of financial advisors around the world. He's also an MDRT and TOT speaker. Rickson's clientele consists of those looking for genuine advice on financial protection, generational wealth, and structuring large value life insurance to obtain external funding. He is a two-time Marathon des Sables finisher, triathlete, and an enthusiast on business process efficiency. So some very interesting things there, Rickson. Welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Aslam.
It is my pleasure to welcome our panelists as well as all of our attendees to today's webinar. And we're going to get right to it after a little bit of housekeeping. So at the very first, this webinar is due to last about 60 minutes. However, if you get disconnected, you can always click to rejoin, click the same link to rejoin. And if for any other reason you are unable to join, we will have this available as a recording. And we will share the link with you after the event is complete. We welcome you to revisit the content with yourself or share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues. We also invite your comments and questions. At the bottom of your screen, you will have a Q&A chat box where you can type in your questions, and the questions will be addressed by the panelists during the Q&A session, which we will have towards the latter half of the webinar. So don't forget to put in your questions. We certainly will get to as many of them during the webinar as possible. And those that we can't get to during the webinar, we will address them post the webinar directly to you. We've got a lot of interesting questions and a lot of interesting opinions and views from our panelists. So we'll get right to it. Starting with this poll for our audience. And the poll should be coming up on screen. There you go. And we want your views. What is the advisable age to start retirement planning? And you've got your options on screen. Please go ahead, log in your votes, and we'll come back to the poll in just a second after talking to our panelists. So what is the advisable age to start retirement planning? And I'm going to put this question out to both our panelists, starting with you, Mr. Ashok. We started off, and when I think of retirement, we tend to think of the way that our grandparents, our parents, our children, each generation has had different mindsets, different approaches to retirement. We ourselves would have probably changed our views many times. We try to think of retirement in a particular manner. Sometimes it's, I'm going to live and retire with my children. Then it's, I want to be independent. So how do you think about retirement? I mean, there are quite a few differences, but what are your thoughts?
First of all, if you had asked the question from me, my answer would be very different. when should you start planning for retirement? Let's first wait for the poll and then I will give you my
Okay.
answer.
All right.
Just remind
We
me once we get the polls, and then I'll give you my feedback.
Sure.
Okay. So
Uh,
yeah, now ask me once
we
again.
have the results on screen. We seem to have a very knowledgeable audience who said that we should start retirement planning at the between the ages of 35 and 40. 69% state that 40 to 40 sorry 26% says it should be during the age group or during the ages of 40 to 45 years, 3% 45 to 50, and about 3% 50 plus. There you go.
Okay. Now my
There you go.
answer to the question. Never start planning for your retirement.
Hmm.
Never.
Okay.
Because what does the word retirement mean?
Hmm.
You know, in India, I used to drive Premier Padmani, and in the 1990s, they retired Padmani Fiat. In 1994, they retired the Jumbo 747. They were put out of use. I never want to be put out of use. So I never want to plan, oh, one day I'll be put out of use, so let me start planning for it. The question should be, when do you start financial planning for your second innings, for your later years?
Sure.
Not for retirement, because I never want to feel that I'm useless now. I don't want to be put out of use. So never plan for retirement. Do your financial planning. I'm not saying don't do your financial planning so that when you grow old, when you cannot work hard like the way you do now, you should be financially independent. You should be financially secure.
Yeah.
But you should never retire.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. A lot of food for thought there. The approach, the mindset is very different from what I think traditionally we think about.
Well, Anselm, I'm going to give you my point of view.
Yep.
And like my mentor once said, you know, if two people agree on everything, then one person is not required. So I'll give you my point of view. You don't have to agree. It is fine to disagree with my point of view.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to share my point of view, what I believe in.
Absolutely. And I think that's the reason we've got our audience here as well. Each of them wants to hear from both of you on retirement. Rixit, I'm going to ask the same question to you. I mean, this is more from a perspective of how you've seen mindsets evolve from generations. And what is the mindset that you carry currently?
I think my perspective on this is it depends upon what you consider retirement to be. In the traditional sense of the term, people looked at retirement as a specific age, at which point in time they could be free from working, and where I think the idea behind it was that your assets would provide the income required for you to carry out the rest of your lifespan. Over the years, what has changed is that the life expectancy in these various parts of the world has changed. People are living longer, may not be healthier, may not be, you know, independent of medical treatment and stuff like that, but certainly longer. Life expectancy has gone up over 15 to 20 years over the last 70 years. So the thing now is, what you have to consider is, at what point in time do you want to be financially free? And when I say financially free, a lot of this came from the thinking behind the executive who was working in an organization who may or may not have liked their job, but required the money to pay their bills, right? So the idea was, at what point are my assets going to replace the need for my expenditure or the income that I'm generating to take care of my expenditure, right? So this is the thought process that drove retirement and the thought process behind retirement. And if you ask me today, if you asked me 20 years ago what I wanted to do at retirement and when I wanted to retire, it would be a very different answer to what I have today. My answer today may be similar or on the similar lines as Ashok, in the perspective that I can't see myself ever retiring completely from any active form of work. But the question is, at what point do you want to be financially free where you don't feel like you have to work to be able to pay your bills, right?
Correct.
And that be an income that is generated from an asset class, a parallel income from your business. It could be absolutely anything. So I think the earlier you begin starting towards that goal, the quicker you'll accomplish it. The
Yep.
question is, when do you want to retire? And when you
Hmm.
know when do you want to retire and what you want to do, then it's easy to work backwards and figure out when should you start saving for that goal. But the
Sure.
sooner the better.
Sure, but I'm going to sort of dig a little deeper into that because I hear you. I hear both of you in terms of the concept, in terms of the mindset, perfectly understandable, and I completely agree that we need to look at financial planning. Retirement may be a concept that's changed from the way it was structured. So, what would you say someone needs to consider? Because and the place where I was coming from is, when let's look at it. Our grandparents probably thought that I'm going to sort of probably end up living with my children. They'll take care of me during retirement. I don't need to think about anything. I'll sit down, read a paper, have a cup of tea in the morning, have some nice lunch, and then, that probably was the extent of their planning. And the reason I'm sort of getting into the mindset is because the financial aspect goes along with that, right? Because today, instead of saying that if I'm going to sit down and have a cup of coffee in the morning for the rest of my life, I'm thinking, no, I want to continue being active. I want to travel the world. I want to do probably sit on a beach drinking margaritas. I don't know. From that perspective, how do you approach the concept of creating or crafting a retirement plan for your clients? Is it going to be, what is the conversation you have, or what is the conversation an individual should have with their planner or with themselves if they're looking to work on their retirement plan?
Ashok, would you like to
Uh,
go first?
Oh, I'm
Boss, if
not.
you want to.
Anselm, I go first or Rickson goes first?
No, please go ahead. Boss, you go ahead.
Okay. Uh, my grandfather was old at 55. My father was old at 65. And, the typical conversation our parents would have at 65. Son, now we have few days, few years left, and they were preparing themselves and they were behaving like older people. I'm 70 and I'm young. I have no reason and I have no plans of slowing down. I want to continue at this pace for many, many years, as long as my health permits. When do I start planning? I start planning at a very young age. Like Rickson said, yes, I must have a steady stream of income.
Yes.
Steady stream of income to compensate not only if I want to retire, what if I fall sick? So the financial planning has to be done. That do I have medical insurance? Do I have critical illness? Do I have disability insurance? We all save money for retirement. I go to many people and they talk about savings. Yes, I have saved enough money. When I retire, do you have proper medical insurance? No. I mean, what if you fall sick? All the money that you have saved for your retirement or for your son's education, probably you may have to pay for your sickness. So that financial planning is required. It doesn't have to be age 50. It has to start from age 30, 35, even younger, for planning your financial planning for later years. So
Right.
you're financially secure. Do you have a second stream of income? This pandemic has taught us many things. One of the things is that, and I ask my clients, do you think this can happen again in our lifetime? Yes, it can. If that happens, do I have a second stream of income? If my income stops, can I generate income from some other source? It could be income from property. It could be your pension plan, a guaranteed annuity plan. So the planning has to start, and there are various ways of planning for the future. But our life expectancy is much longer. I can't expect to retire at age 65 and for next 25 years, I'm going to sit in front of a television. No, I don't have those plans. Rickson, over to you.
I think To begin with, if you sit and have a chat with a advisor, or even today for that matter, I know a fair bit of the younger generation today does not have time in their lives to have that extra relationship with a consultant or an advisor. But there are means and mediums for you to write out your financial plan online. There are a couple of things that you need to bear in mind. Start from figuring out where would you like to retire, what is the age you have in mind? What kind of a lifestyle are you thinking about having? Is it going to be active? Do you expect to be in one place? Do you expect to travel a lot? What's your outflow going to look like? This is something to consider. If you are married with children, or if you think you want to leave behind a legacy, then what kind of assets do you plan to leave behind? Have you sorted all of those things out already? Medical insurance is a big thing because in various parts of the world today, the private sector is really looking into medical insurance. So the question right now is at the age of 60, 65, 50, 55, 35, 40, whenever you think is the right age to retire, have you considered the fact that you might require medical care or medical insurance? The cost of those things is something to consider. Debt. Do you have any debt running at the moment? Do you have any exposure to taxes? Are there any inheritance taxes to consider? Are there income taxes to consider in jurisdictions that you think you might be retiring in? These are factors to consider when you're planning your retirement. I can tell you from experience, I got into the business at the age of 21. When I was 21, the conversation we had with prospects and clients at the time were 21-year-olds who were willing to take advice from a 21-year-old. And we spoke about retirement, and a lot of them couldn't fathom the possibility of this conversation. Imagine having a conversation with a 21-year-old who just started working about retirement when they haven't even had, gone through the rest of it, which may have been marriage, children, etc., buy their first car, first house, whatever else the case may be. But today I can tell you that this morning I had a meeting with an individual who asked me to meet his son, but the individual alone voluntarily is working at the age of 77. And I say working, he's in a form of business, but the reality, his idea of retirement is not sitting in the house or playing golf 24/7. He may have taken a step back off the pedal, where he's still coming and working a couple of hours a day to keep his mind active and busy, but he doesn't need to work an 8-hour day, punch in and punch out to make ends meet. So there are factors like this that need to be considered, and I think even today with all the information that's out there on the net, if you just Google it, what are the factors that you need to consider, you probably will be in a position to write a financial plan for yourself, or if not, at least do a self-analysis or a check to know where you'd like to be and what should be the next steps to get there. Just the considerations.
No, absolutely. I think spot on with regard to some of the points that you've suggested and made in terms of the approach that we should have towards retirement. And I think it is evident from both parts of the conversation that retirement has changed and it continues to change. Like Boss mentioned, earlier 50 was old, today 70 is young. Lifespans probably were 50 and 60 earlier. Today, very realistically, there are people who are talking about living till 100, 120. So definitely more to dig into, which we will get to right after this poll. We have a second poll for the audience which is coming up, which I think is going to be an intriguing question to get to you as well and get your views on. Why do you choose retirement? The options are also very interesting. Retirement age with employer, enough of wealth to retire. I want to enjoy life experience and experience things that I put on hold because of work, and or my kids have settled in life. So some very traditional responses and answers that you generally would have heard from people before, and reasons for people retiring. So to the audience, please do submit in your responses to this in terms of the poll question, and we'll get to the answers in a bit. But I'd like to also sort of look at asking both of you that question. And I think we've gotten an answer for that. I mean, you don't intend to retire. So retirement as a concept per se doesn't necessarily seem very relevant to both of you. So what does that mean? I mean, you will continue to be gainfully productive. You will be employed what will you do? Or, so for someone who hasn't thought of it in that manner, where they haven't thought of it that, oh, I don't necessarily need to retire, what do you do?
Um,
Erickson, go ahead, please.
I'm going to answer this with a small case study that a very successful case study of one of our clients. So I met this individual many years ago in Dubai when he was 27 years old. And when he was 27 years old, he was earning 3.5 or 4,000 dirhams a month at best. And at that point in time, he was very clear with me about his goals in life. He was married, he had a child and a second child on the way. And he was very clear that Dubai was not going to be his final destination. He was looking at moving west. And when I asked him when that plan was for, he said that plan would be fulfilled once he could move to that jurisdiction, whether it's Canada, Australia, whatever the case may be. And the idea was that he was able to purchase a house completely without having to take on a mortgage, that he would move to that place and be retired when there was enough money ready at the point of moving to be able to take care of education for his two children, even though both those jurisdictions take care of either subsidized or free education for university. The third thing that he had in mind was to have $1 million available as play money to be able to invest in various portfolios and manage his own money. And the final thing that was required for him was to be able to get a mortgage-free property. These were the things that were required. And when I asked him, I was not his first financial advisor, let me say that. I met him along the way. And when I saw him, he explained that this was all that needed to be put in place by the age of 45. As the years went by, this individual's income went from 4,000 dirhams a month to whatever that exponential number is, without having to disclose too many details over here. I'll tell you one thing that didn't change for him is he put aside in excess of 60% of his income. This was just the rule of thumb for him. It didn't matter whether he was earning 4,000 dirhams a month now and he was living initially with his, it was him and his wife with a dual income. His parents were there. They had some kind of a support system. To later on, when he was now the sole income earner, he made sure that over 60% of his income was saved. I want to say by the age of 43, he relocated from Dubai, having met all those goals, ticked all those boxes. And today, when I ask this individual what he does, it's very interesting. He set up a consultancy firm. His initial idea was to set up a convenience store, like a grocery, in Australia or Canada, and basically have a stress-free life and not have to worry about money, because his $1 million was invested in equity markets and was giving him a return that could take care of his cost of living. Bearing in mind that rent was not a priority, there was no mortgage, and education planning for the children was sorted out. What he does today, though, is while he has all of that stuff working for him, he runs a consultancy business, and he needs to procure 1 or 2 gigs a year to keep himself gainfully occupied. Money is not the priority or the reason for doing this. So from a success story standpoint, I can say that was a great, just knowing what the end goal needed to look like, he re-engineered the rest of the steps along the way. And I think that's a great way to do it. I think Simon Sinek says this in his book, is start with the end in mind. So if you know what the end is, and that needs some introspection. I also want to say that as a financial advisor, I won't take care of my financial planning myself. I talk to somebody else for it, because I need somebody to ask me the questions, and I just want to be able to give them the answers and draft my plan accordingly. But this was I hope this case study gives some kind of clarity on a positive spin on things and how people have managed to make this work for them.
Yes, it does. I seem to have lost both of my panelists, or maybe I'm lost,
Aslam, I can hear you and we can see you.
Yes, you're visible. Ashok, do you want to answer that the same question?
Yeah, there was about to. So your client had a goal, had an objective, and he stuck to the objective. So here the question was not that I'm going to retire. at 45, these are my objectives and I want to be financially independent.
Correct.
I do not want to be stressed about income. So if my income reduces, or I know that I have covered up my bases, I don't have a mortgage, my children's education has been paid for, so I'm secure, I'm financially independent.
Correct.
Like you said, he had probably one or two clients per year, which kept him going. So he was not stressed for income.
No.
He
Yeah.
was retired. He just chose to slow down.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
absolutely.
One of the things which Anselm I'd like to pick on.
Please.
Where do you want to retire?
Hmm.
I don't know whether you want to. Today, if you pick out, okay, I want to retire next to my children. My children are going to the US. I want to retire in the US. Probably I would have another introspection whether I want to go to the US, because today I have been in Dubai for 45 years. If I move to a new place,
yeah,
my family is here, my friends are here. At 75, you move to a new place and you have to find new friends. It's not easy.
correct.
And also, if you think that you're going to stay with your son or with your daughter-in-law, probably, ask them whether they want you to stay with them. Probably they want their own space and you want your own space. So that is one thing that we should ask our children. Yeah, I want to live near you,
Yeah.
but I don't want to live with you. And as I'm in the beginning, you said, sitting on the retirement means sitting on the beach and sipping a pina colada. Those are all in the magazines that they try and lure you for retirement. How many pina coladas can you sip? And you'll probably become a drunkard sipping all those pina coladas. Yeah.
Probably end up getting diabetes as well with all the sugar in those
End up-
drinks.
Yeah. Also, people say, when I retire, I'm going to travel, I'm going to see the world and all those things. They list down everything, all the places that they want to visit. They retire, they visit all the places, they look at the calendar, 6 months have passed and they've done everything that they wanted. And when you are in your 70s, okay, not 70, when you're in your 75s and 80s and all, traveling also is not easy.
Hmm.
Even if you're traveling business class or first class, it is not easy. Hopping on a plane, different time zones. So it's not easy for you to say, oh, I want to keep on traveling. Probably your health will not permit you. Yeah. So those are good things to plan. But the more important is, how do I continue to be useful to this society? When you're working, you are a contributor to the society. You're a contributor. When you retire, you become a consumer.
Hmm.
How can you stop being a consumer and still continue to contribute to the society?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think some very important and interesting things to think about, and very well put. We'll go to the results of the poll before I forget, and let's hear and see what our audience had to say. Okay, the majority of our audience says they want to enjoy life or experience things that they put on hold because of work. That is 78%. 36% say that they have enough of wealth to retire. And 11% says that because it's my kids have settled in life, or because it is the retirement age with their employer. So that's been the audience response. I think most of them want to sort of have a feeling or a sense that they want to enjoy life, enjoy the experience, take it a little slow, similar to what we were talking about. But I think one thing that has definitely been underscored from both of you in terms of something that is important to have is a sense of purpose, a sense of direction, a sense of being or continuing to being a contributor to society and to your family. Is important to keep you going. And I can share an example, a real life case that I had. There was a general or a colonel from the army who was retired, probably in his 80s, early 80s, in a firm in India where I used to work. And he would make it a point to come to the office every single day. He I mean, being that age, he was probably during the British times, or he would serve. So he had this pipe. He would pull out his pipe. He'd smoke his tobacco, and he'd walk up and down the stairs. And when he sat in the board meetings, on the meetings that we had, his mind was as sharp as ever. You couldn't get something past him. So, being engaged in something that you enjoy and love doing definitely, I've experienced, helps keep you going, keeps you mentally and physically active and fit. So important part of our planning. I'm going to get a little more into financial planning. So in terms of we've discussed, and it's important to sort of plan financially for retirement. So there are a couple of things that how do we approach it? What do we look at? Do we look at very often when we think about retirement, traditionally we've thought about that, I'm going to work for 60 years or 65, and then I'm going to have to live off that income that I've earned after that. Now, the chances are, given what we are saying, that I am going to work and have a productive life up to a certain point of time, after which I'm going to decide either to take it a little slow or to have a different source of income. Now, at that point, I'm assuming income isn't the most important. So how do you financially put into place a plan that takes care of those aspects? So today, let's assume that there is someone who's in his 40s and is in with the concept of, I will continue to work till I'm able and capable and till I can contribute. What would you say his approach to financial planning needs to be, given that he wants to be secure at a certain point of time? Boss, do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, I think we need to work out what is my current income. Based on my current income, what are my expenses? Then you add inflation.
Yep.
Now, some people say that you should have 70% of your income for retirement. I don't know whether it's 70% is good. I think we should plan for 100% of what I'm earning today, including inflation, whatever it is. I should be able to generate enough income. And also, we normally recommend always take out only 4 to 5% from your investments for your expenses. So you can't take out 8, 9, 10% and then expect that money to last forever and ever. A person should also look at buying a guaranteed annuity for his basic expenses. There are plans which are available, which will give you about 3-4% return, 3% return, which is guaranteed for lifetime. And you know that whatever happens, my basic expenses have been taken care of. And I think it's a conversation that everyone should have with their financial planner, one-on-one. That these are my goals and objectives. This is what I want to do. And the conversation with the financial planner should not be restricted only to your money, that how much money do you require. It should be broader than just financial. Okay, I need $100,000 when I retire at age 65. For me to get $100,000, this is what I need to put in. I mean, that is one part of retirement planning, but other parts should be, where do I want to retire? How do I want to engage myself? What do I want to do when I retire? Do I want to play golf? I mean, some people say I'll play golf. How much golf can you play? All these golfers, I've been to many social gatherings, and these golfers, first they are boring and then they're bored. Or first they're bored and then they become boring. Now they'll tell you stroke by stroke whatever happened, hole number 1 what happened, hole number 2 what happened. That's the only conversation that I don't think I'd like to have that conversation with any of my friends when they retire. No, it has to be a more meaningful conversation. So have a conversation with your advisor. And again, it should not be based only on your finances, but a deeper conversation. I think Rickson, you can take over the rest.
I have a perspective as a 40-year-old, as a 43-year-old actually. So basically, a couple of years ago, we traveled to Bali, and towards the end of our trip, we were driving and we saw restaurant. Actually, one of the food aggregator websites showed us that there was a restaurant close by which had a very high rating. We took a look at it, and I saw the restaurant that the direction that Google Maps pointed us in seemed like an open paddy field. And the paddy field had a small little shed in the middle of it, which looked pretty active. It looked like a place where cattle was kept before, but it had now been converted into a restaurant. I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but it may have been Nook or something like that. Either ways, we went into the restaurant and it was packed, jam-packed. And in the corner there, while we were sitting and waiting for our food, of course, there were lots of tourists in that restaurant. Lunchtime, no place really. In the corner there was an individual sitting who looked like he could not have been older than his late 40s, early 50s. He had a wire running from a socket and he had a laptop plugged in, and he seemed to be sitting and working hard at the work. Now, what made him look like the owner of the establishment was the fact that he was sitting really close to the ordering window or to the cash till or whatever else was there. And in my head, I had this fantasy running, and I decided to challenge it and ask the individual. So basically, he turned out to be a person that ran a successful business in Australia, which was an online portal, an e-commerce platform that made him money over there. And he decided to open a restaurant for himself in Bali, because he, for the longest time, traveled from Australia to Bali on his holidays, and he loved the place. And when an opportunity came to buy this restaurant, he decided to do that. And he lived in Bali riding a scooter, a Vespa, from one place to the other, versus living in Sydney, Australia, where the cost of living was so much higher. So now going back to takes on retirement, the question I have to ask is, are you moving to a jurisdiction that is against your current currency or in favor of your current currency? If you're saving today in dirhams or dollars, are you moving to a currency which is weaker than the dollar? Are you moving to a currency, to a land where the dollar is, where your current currency is going to have to work extra hard to make you that same retirement? Are you moving to a tax-free jurisdiction? Are you moving to a jurisdiction where now you will have an income tax? Have you considered these things? In this gentleman's case, he ran a business which required him to spend a few weeks in a quarter in Australia, but pretty much everything else was remote. And all the income he made out of that, he spent on his life in Bali, which was a very relatively low-cost lifestyle that he needed to maintain over there. So for him, even if he didn't hit the same numbers as it would have required for him to live a life in Sydney, it didn't matter, because he probably required 1/4 or 1/5 of that income to take care of his life and his expenditure in Australia. Was he retired? No. Was he financially free? Yes. Did he find a different way to work the system? Absolutely. Could his e-commerce platform run forever? Absolutely. But the point I'm trying to make is it may not just be down to the basics of planning from the perspective of assets and liabilities and income and things like that. But a consideration is, where are you moving? And as Ashok mentioned earlier, it's very possible for people to skip some of the questions along the way. The ideal thing for you to do is to just sit with a financial advisor who's had the experience and the practice of asking these questions and getting the right answers out of you. There are several times when we go and meet a client where they're interested in the proposition, in the plan, in the quotation, in the investment, in the return on the investment. But the question is that thing that your neighbor is buying, is that relevant to you? I want to share one last case study over here. And this is from an executive that has worked in Dubai for the last 25 to 30 years as an administration assistant with a fairly large firm. Now, she's lived here for the last 30 odd years. She's unmarried and she's in her 50s. When she was introduced to me by her ex-banker, she was introduced to me with the intention for me to manage her portfolio, because the current bankers who were managing it were not doing a good enough job of it. When I looked at her portfolio and I understood from her what her plan was for the future, it was very clear with us from seeing all her information that if she chose to retire today, and I met her at 51, if she chose to retire at the age of 51, if she kept all her money in just simple fixed deposits or secured deposits in banks in India, the return on that deposit was more than sufficient to take care of her retirement plan, and even then some. But when we looked at her portfolios where the money was invested, it was invested in the absolutely highest risk class that an individual could possibly take. Where portfolios were leveraged, structured notes were put in place, she didn't understand what was going on. The reality is she didn't need to take that level of risk. And if she wanted to, she could even stop working right now and switch back to that. She's decided to continue working out of choice, right? But all we needed to do was realign her portfolio to make sure all the money was invested in secured bonds, secured investments, fixed deposits, something that had zero risk associated with it, and she would be in a position to retire even today. So again, this would be an example of, also in her case, she knew she was going to move to India, right? We're talking about earning in US dollars or in dirhams versus living your retired life in India. So for her, that number really made sense, that if she decided to retire today versus her company says it's the age of retirement is 65, instead if she retired today, she would be more than comfortable financially, right? So consideration over here may be also currency. The point is, she would never have uncovered that information had she not spoken to me as an advisor, and had we not gone through that entire process of identifying what was the requirement, why did she need the investment proposition, where did she want to retire, how much money was required, things like that. And which is why I said it makes sense to go with someone who's had the experience of asking these questions 3 to 4 times a day. I don't think you would be looking at anybody else other than a financial advisor to help you with the personal finance. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. I think some very good points from both, and good guidelines for someone to start planning. It's been 42 minutes already. I did realize that time flies so fast. I've just got a cue from the team that we've got a third poll coming up, which is there on screen. What do you think is the most important when planning for retirement? Having enough money to take care of basic expenses and medical expenses, have enough money to live comfortably throughout retirement years, have enough money to pay for long-term care. So those 3 questions, please do submit your answers, and we will get to that shortly. I think interestingly, there are 2 things that has covered, that sort of has been brought about by those questions, and the conversation before that. Can you talk to us a little bit about the sort of mindset with regard to risk when it comes down to the later years that someone should carry? What should the sort of plan be? Because we often see many scenarios. One where you're faced with either there's a number you want to hit as a client, and now the only way to get to that number is to take a lot of risk. But at a certain age, there needs to be a different approach, or what would you suggest or recommend the approach is towards managing money at that time? First, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think I will say something, and then probably Rickson can shed more light on that. Sure. But yeah, initially, when I start saving at age 30, 35, probably I can take more risks. I'm buying more equity, and if the equity market goes down, I have enough time to recover. But if I have retired at age 65 and then the market tanks, then it's going to take me a very, very long time for me to recover the money. So as we go closer to our older years, I'll not use the word retirement, older years, we have to probably switch from equities to bonds and to fixed income, so that at least my money is secure. And probably you can still have 10%, which will give you a higher return, which can overall increase your returns on the portfolio. But yeah, as we grow older, we have to be more conservative. And yeah, Rickson, I think you can shed more light on that.
So I'll give you a perspective of myself, and I'll give you a perspective from my clients. If you ask me, and if I go by textbook, I'd say yes, there's an accumulation phase, there's a consolidation phase, then there's a phase where you're thinking about passing it down from one generation to the next. There's you go inheritance and bits like that. But I'll tell you from experience of working with some clients who got to that point where, whether it's age-based or whether it's the fact that they're looking at retirement at a specific time or a specific time span, I've noticed a couple of things happen. There are people that have broken that mold, right? The masses do follow this. Yes, we'll take a lot more risks when we're younger because we can recover from the markets failing earlier. But if you can think about from a perspective of accumulation, if you can line those dots, and I'll go back to that client of mine who was 51 years old when we started out, is now 54 years old. Most of her portfolio sits in secured investments because the reality is at this age, does she need to take a risk? The answer is no, because her needs can be met by very safe and secure portfolios, and she doesn't have a need that extends beyond that, so there is no need to take the risk. However, would you be surprised if I told you that she keeps a portion of money as play money, right? Why? Because there is this curiosity now. And if you think about retirement in the general sense of the term, and we're not very in favor of that word per se, but if you think
Yeah.
of the general word retirement, you're looking at about 8 hours a day that you initially used to work, probably 2 hours a day that you drove back and forth from work. So you've got that time available free. And if you add play money to 9 to 10 hours of available time, which was resource not available before, now there's something you could do with your money. Some people I know get into active management of their own money at retirement, regardless of age, whether they do it at the age of 40, whether they do it at the age of 60, 65, and those numbers could vary. It could be 10% of their entire portfolio that they want to manage themselves. It could be a fixed amount, 5,000 US dollars. I'm just going to invest this money myself. And any returns I make out of this, there are some rules. I'll move my returns out. I'll keep the principal invested. There could be various ways of looking at it. What I challenge you to do is rather than stick to a specific stencil cut mold, think about what it is that you want to accomplish. If you think you're curious enough to have money invested in the market, I always tell clients, you don't go to a casino with your bank balance. You go to a casino maybe with a little bit of money, and if you lose it, you lose it. If you make it, you make it. But you're not going to go there with your bank balance and say, I'm sure about this bet. I'm going to put all my life savings in this one thing, right? So this is how I would think about, just because the potential result could be so adverse. Think
Yeah.
about your play in a similar manner. Think about the possibility of having a small portion of money, if you are that way inclined and disciplined enough to follow the markets. Think about putting a small portion of your money and playing around with it. And think about having the rest of your money earning you a specific level of income. Think about diversification. Some of the money could be in property that earns you a rental income. Some of it, of course, could be in equities, in bonds, giving you a dividend, fixed income, life insurance policies. This is a huge part of your portfolio. We've seen a lot of people pay very little attention to that specific element, but that can make a world of a difference in your latter years, especially when succession planning, critical care, and things like that are taken into consideration. And also, I remember Ashok opened this meeting, by talking about annuities. This is a big part of our portfolio, which in most cases I find in this region missing.
Yep.
Yeah, essentially consider the possibility of having a lump sum of money paying you regular income for the rest of your life. It doesn't have to be all your money, but it could be a portion of it. And then the different varying other asset classes.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. I think that was a very good, detailed response. We certainly uh, we have a very good holistic picture that we've been able to craft about looking at the later years of life. I think I can't remember where I read this, but there was in financial planning, we typically tend to define things in 3 stages. While earlier the concept was to define it as the learning phase. That's when we are students, we are studying. Everything was taken care of by our parents. Didn't have to worry about much in terms of finance, except going to school and getting good grades. So learning phase. Then we moved to the earning phase, where we earned our money. We sort of, for the longest period of time, created our wealth, grew in the profession that we chose, and then we, like traditionally was many of them would call the yearning phase, which in olden days or in the older mindset, if you look at and you think about, probably made sense. But today, I like to sort of look at and define that as the returning phase, where you're not just returning to contribute to society, to work, to sort of giving back. You've got more experience, you've got more knowledge, you've got, you're like your boss mentions many a time, you're more experienced and you've got more credibility at the stage. So thinking about it from those three phases, it definitely we need to look at and redefine what the word retirement stands for. So yeah, something that is food for thought for all of our audience members. We've got a few questions from our audience members, and I'm going to start by asking those. First question that we have, which should be coming up on screen, and I think it's a good one. It's an important question that we need to answer and keep in mind. The question is, my medical insurance is currently covered by the company I work for, the company I work for at the moment. Is there a significant risk of waiting to retire before getting medical insurance? Boss, I know this is something that you're very passionate about. I'm going to ask you to answer that.
Yeah. The company has insurance on you. There are a couple of possibilities. One is you may switch jobs after some time. And so the other company may have an upgraded medical version insurance, or they may have a lower version of medical insurance, which is being offered. That is one. What if you decide to go and start your own business? That means you have to start your own medical insurance at that time. And the biggest problem which we have, which we do not understand the importance, and this has happened to one of my friends and client recently. He was working for Credit Suisse, one of the private bankers, private bank, and he fell sick. He fell very sick. The bank continued to cover him for his gardening leave and whatever period that he was eligible. Now he does not have medical insurance, and he does not have, and he's not insurable. What happens then? People tell me, Ashok, I'm insured with my group. No, you're insured with your group as long as you're there. What if something major happens? Heart problem, cancer, diabetes, etc. That is the time when no other insurance company is willing to insure you. You may lose your job, you may not be able to get back to work for extended period, and also you may not be able to buy further medical insurance. So look at top-up medical plans which are available in the market, which will cover you for hospitalization and major medical. Do not rely on the medical insurance provided by your employer. You must do it for yourself and for your family on your own.
Yep, I think very well put, and the example that you shared certainly very hard hitting and very close to home. So do look at the options. You have the ability and the opportunity to purchase top-up covers, different kinds of plans. Talk to your advisor. There is certainly something that you can do to put things and put cover into place. There are many things, not just a few. We have the next question that we're going to go to, and we have that up on screen. And this is directed to you, boss. Why is it necessary to be bound by the Protestant work ethic, whereby it's considered to be valuable to continue to be a contributor to society? Why can't one just decide that enough is enough and take things in a much easier manner?
What do you mean by enough is enough?
So I think what he's saying is that
if I'm enjoying what I do, I'm having enough of enjoyment, I should, if you're not enjoying what you do, that's the time when you say enough is enough. If you're enjoying what you do, why should you give it up? I keep on saying this. Retirement at age 65 is an artificial line drawn by someone else, and they tell us when to stop contributing. If you want to enjoy and if you want to take it easy, yes, you should be financially secure. That's what Rickson has been saying and what we've been saying. You should be financially secure for next 3 months. I want to take a vacation. So these could be mini retirements. I want to take a sabbatical for 1 year. After 1 year, come back to this and start contributing. Take a year off. So as long as you're financially independent, if you're not financially independent, then probably you will not be able to take that chance. You will not be able to take a sabbatical for 1 year or 6 months. So as long as you're financially independent, and enough is enough. Probably you're not enjoying what you do, and that's why you're saying enough is enough.
Yep. Thank you. I think it makes sense. If you love what you do, it's like you're never working. You keep enjoying, you keep going. And I think you underscored it's important to be financially independent to be able to have the freedom to do whatever you want, whichever way you choose. Thank you. We have one more question. We've got a couple of more questions and we're going to get to them. There is on screen, if someone is hitting 40 and wants to retire at 45, what is the risk profile you propose for managing the financial planning for retirement? Assume the individual plans to retire in a different country, which is relatively cheaper to live. Rickson, I think this one's right at you.
This is an interesting one. I'll tell you what, and I've said this before as well, that there is, think about breaking away from the stencil cut molds, right? If you're looking at, if you're hitting 40 and you want to retire, the back question I have for you is how much have you already put aside for your retirement? From a planning perspective, what was the number you wanted to hit, or what is the expenditure you expect for yourself? And once you've understood that, then the question is, over the next 5 years, are you going to be in accumulation phase still, or are you going to be in a consolidation phase? Are you looking at, do you think being in a safer bet as far as portfolios are concerned will get you to the finish line? And if it is, then the question is there a need to take on risk? So your answer really to this would be based on where you currently stand with your money. And in the next 5 years, if you continue on the same path, will you be able to accomplish that goal of retiring at 45? If the answer is no, then there are two considerations for you. Maybe you need to take a higher level of risk, or maybe you need to move that target of 45 a few years down.
Yep.
Or move to another cheaper place.
There you go. It could be one of those three. Thank you both for that. We're almost, I think probably this is going to be the last or the second last question. I've been told this, we can make this the last two questions. We've got more questions coming in. Thank you for your questions. We are going to be answering them post this by email to you. But the question on screen, percentage wise, can you classify the net worth when retired? Oh, okay. They want a sort of asset allocation in terms of 20% in deposits, 25% in equity. So just a rough or a broad asset allocation for someone. Rickson, do you want to give it a go?
Again, I'll answer this question based on some of our clients who have retired. There is no fixed answer for this. We have clients who've got over 60 to 70% of their portfolio sitting in equities, right, at retirement. But they understand it. A portion of their money may be money that they self-manage, either more riskier or they're taking a call on more regularly. And on the flip side, we also have clients who've got a very large, if not traditionally, if you think about it, majority of the clients are sitting with a fair bit of money in fixed income products or secure investments, certificates of deposits, fixed deposits, and things like that. And if they make the move from that into more riskier products, it's more to do with the fact that the interest rates of those banks now are unable to give them the same level of income to continue with their retired life. So I'll urge you to consider, rather than going for the mold, think about what do you need from retirement, and are your current assets in a position to give you that? Consider also the fact that a pendulum swings both ways. So when you think of a higher level of risk and a higher return, if the markets crash, there is a backswing as well, which means you stand to lose a fair bit of money as well. If you're okay with the potential of those losses, then consider whether the higher returns is worth your time or not.
Absolutely. I think very well said and very well answered. We have that last question to get to, 1 minute to go, and there it is up on screen. How easy is it to get a medical insurance after the age of 50 years? Is it difficult? Oh, I think a very interesting question. Boss, do you want to give it a go?
No, it is not difficult to get to a medical insurance after 50. 50 is young. However, if you have a medical condition, then you have a problem. So it is not the question of age 50, but what's the medical condition? From outside, you look healthy. We have to find out if you're healthy enough from inside. So when are you free to go to the doctors?
Yeah, Thank you for that. I think the talk to an advisor. There are plans that may not necessarily be as expensive, especially if you look at inpatient-only plans that you can look at an earlier age, if cost is something that you're conscious of, and then there are ways to work that out.
Azam, I'd like to take a stab at that answer as well, if you don't mind. That question
Please
is,
go ahead. Please go ahead.
I work with this amazing company, Continental Insurance Brokers, and as a advisor working with Continental, I have a choice to either be on the company's group policy or purchase my own plan. And the reason I'm saying this is the question was about 50s, but we know people in their 20s and 30s who've been denied coverage or been given limited coverage. So I don't think it's about the age of 50. What you need to consider, and this goes back to the question that was asked before, is if you are considering medical insurance, if you think about the later you push it out for, the more difficult it can possibly get. But there is no guarantee that at a younger age, you will necessarily get the cover. The ideal situation would be to try and take control of the situation now and potentially have individual or independent medical insurance coverage, which is in your control today, than having to rely on your employer. Also consider the fact that if the attendees in this meeting in this webinar are based out of the UAE, one thing to consider is that your labor contract, your medical insurance is associated with your employer and your labor contract. If a medical condition leaves you unable to work for an extended period of time, your labor contract may not be renewed, which will leave you wide open from a medical insurance or from a lack of medical insurance perspective. So the ideal situation is to be able to own individual or independent medical insurance yourself.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Sixten. Sorry for not getting to you earlier on that, but very well said. The team has told me that they absolutely want me to ask this one last question, and I'm going to put it up on screen. It's a question from one of the female members of our audience. Most Indian women depend on their father and then their husband to manage their finances. Is there a starting point for such women to start understanding the same and be financially independent? So I'm going to go quickly to both of you for your thoughts. Rixon, if you would like to start, and then we'll go to Ashok and
I'll share with you a client story. She took control of her finances when her marriage fell apart, and she had to deal with a special needs child. And today, at the age of 45, she is financially independent, making her own financial decisions. On the flip side, I know of another story where someone is 48-year-old, a single parent, and financially is still dependent upon the decisions of her siblings and her parents. So the starting point, whatever age you are at right now, start now. There is no need for us to wait for a benchmark age for this. In various religions, you have a specific age to reach before you receive a certain sacrament or whatever else the case may be. This is not that. You can take control of the situation today, and you can just research and answer all the questions. There's nothing that stops you from having your own personal piggy bank and putting away money on a regular basis towards your goals.
Absolutely. Thank you. Boss, would you like to address that?
No, I think Rixon was absolutely right. There's no age. And for women, yeah, we all depend. I've seen many women, including my wife sometimes. She leaves all the financial decisions to me. But we have to know, even if you're leaving some of the financial decisions to your husband or to your father, you should be aware of what's happening in the financial world. Start saving money yourself. Even if it is a few $100s per month, start saving money, start to learn about finances. Now, there is no age. Financial learning is not puberty that, you have to wait till certain age to get to that. You can start learning now and start teaching your children how to be financially independent.
Yep. Thank you for that, and thank you for clarifying. I think the idea and the question was more not so much about age, but where to get started. And absolutely, the starting point should be the best way to learn about something is to try doing it. So if it is If you want to learn about investments, start small, start investing, try a policy. And I'll share this. When I was in college at the time, I was more interested in marketing, advertising. So that was my passion, and that was what I used to follow. Going in the trains in Bombay, we would read Midday, which I think if you're from Bombay, from India, you'd probably be familiar with the paper. So Midday was the paper of choice that we would read in the trains. It was a light-hearted, sort of more lighter paper at that time, at least.
Yeah, we used to read
with
Midday because they had the center page was full of
Midday Mate was there on one of those pages as well.
So
But
at least be honest why you used to read Midday.
yeah, so and I used to see these pink papers that many on the train would read. So I was intrigued. Okay, what is this pink paper? And very asking around, I found out that those were the business papers. There were pink pages, and there were the business papers. There was the Economic Times, etc. I started reading that when out of curiosity more than anything else. I wanted to learn a little more. I started reading that. Didn't understand too much at the start, but I kept at it, and I recollect that over time, those concepts, those terminologies, those words, those ideas became a lot more simpler and more familiar to me. I could sit down, have conversations with family, with friends in college, in school. And that's what I would recommend to women who are looking at getting more, taking control of finance themselves or becoming more independent. Start somewhere, start small, burn your hands, doesn't matter. Start with something small that you can learn from. Start reading and being involved in conversations. If there is a conversation happening, sit down, listen, try to participate in it. We all start that way. For men, it tends to be a little more easier because they are in those situations a lot earlier in life, possibly due to the way it is society is structured. But we are planning to have a seminar and a webinar that addresses this as a subject by itself. And while I hope we've been able to give you some pointers as to how you can get started, we will, of course, invite you in for that webinar to be able to help get the first step started and also detail out the path that you can take. I'm afraid we've overextended our time today by a few minutes, but it has been a delightful and an engaging conversation with our two panelists. I'd like to thank you both, Rixon as well as Ashok, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our audience members and attendees who joined in. I'm going to ask a quick closing remark from each of you so that we can end it out. Quick short sentence, if you'd like to, a message you'd like to leave our audience with. Rixon?
You want to start first?
Yeah, sure. I'll make this quick. Back to the question that was asked earlier, because we didn't answer it correctly. We looked at it from an age perspective, and I'll go back to lean into what Anselm said. By the way, today there's a lot of information out there. There are podcasts you can listen to. There are audiobooks that you can listen to or read. There's so much of content out there that can help you begin. Even online portals today allow you to invest small. There is a saying, fail fast and fail often. Start right now. The earlier you fail with your money, the quicker you learn. And just don't go to the casino with all of your money. That's all.
Sound advice, boss?
Yeah, a couple of sometimes we have to retire because I become 100% caregiver. So that is different to, I have to look after my spouse, I have to look after and I become 100% caregiver. So it is very important that I'm financially secure. That is the most important part. And secondly, they say life is a stage. When I leave the stage, I want to be in the middle, amidst my best performance. So there's no retirement. I have to keep on performing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I wish you a fantastic weekend ahead. It is Thursday. Have a great evening and a fantastic weekend. Thank you.